Hi guys, it's Daryl. How you doing today? And it's another super warm day here in Michigan, but cloudy, so it's not as intense because the clouds are out. I haven't checked the forecast to see if it's going to rain or not. I usually don't pay that much attention to the weather anyway because it just doesn't really matter. I got so much to do, and I'd rather be out doing exploring videos, but here we are today with another power equipment video. And this one here you can see is a small curved shaft weed trimmer, string trimmer. This is a quality one though. It has a clutch in it. The clutch ones are nice because you can let the engine idle down and still have this actually stop. The cutter head will stop if you have a clutch, and that's a sign of a more premium upscale unit at least for a curved shaft. Well, it seems like I'm always sneezing while I'm out here working on stuff, but anyway, you look at this one here. This is an unusual one. You don't see many of these. This is a John Deere model 21C, which I'm assuming is 21 cc's and curved shaft. Not 100% sure on that, but a lot of times they make the model numbers up to some sort of criteria like that. Interesting thing about this is John Deere is like a lot of other companies. They don't actually make string trimmers, and sort of like Husqvarna and some other ones. They don't make their own small power equipment. They contract it out to third-party companies with certain specifications, and they buy them and put their name on it. And they have them made in certain colors, like this one was made yellow. I don't know why John Deere wanted yellow, but they did. Husqvarna always gets theirs made in orange. But whereas the Husqvarna weed whackers are, or used to be made exclusively by Weed Eater, and they're really cheap low-end machines, this John Deere is made by Echo. I recognize the powerhead engine on it right away. This is a high quality Echo Kioritz powerhead, and it's a very, very good machine. Stood the test of time, durable, really almost commercial duty. This is a really, really good motor on this, but right now it's not running right. It seems to run really good for a while. Every once in a while it won't start. Sometimes it starts and runs good for a while then stops. So it's got something going on. I'm suspecting possibly either an air leak or a cracked fuel line, something unusual. So I'm going to take it apart and inspect it. And the first thing we always do when we inspect something like this is to remove the air filter cover and the air cleaner so we can get a better look inside at the inner parts, what's going on. And we're going to go ahead and take that single slotted screw off there, pull out the air filter, which is a little, ooh, that could be our problem right there. The air filter is like totally saturated with like an oily fuel residue. That's all in my hands. That gets in the air filter and it blocks off the flow of air, so the engine can't run. It can't breathe. And that very well could be what's wrong with this one. The question is, why is it getting saturated with fuel? The common problem for that is the metering arm in the carburetor could be set too high. If the metering arm is set too high, too much fuel gets blown up into the intake chamber, which is this open throat of the carburetor right here. Too much fuel gets blown up in there. It can't all get sucked in and breathed into the motor to burn, and sometimes it'll come back and accumulate in the air filter, especially a soft absorbent air filter like that. Now we're going to have to clean that with some gasoline or solvent of some sort and then blow it out. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to reset the jet screws on the carburetor. Where are they at? Over here on this side. We're going to reset the jet screws on the carburetor back open to like 1.5, 1.25 turns each. And we're going to see if this thing will fire up and run without the air filter. And if it does, that'll tell us what the story is. Alright, it fired right up and ran great. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the carburetor real quick, and I'm going to show you how to check that metering arm. First thing we're going to do is use a Phillips screwdriver and remove these two screws. They're long screws that go all the way through the air cleaner housing, carburetor, and into the cylinder head. And once that's off, the carburetor will be clearly exposed right here and should be ready to pop off. We'll just have to remove that throttle cable linkage by pressing it over and popping it out. And the only thing still holding it on would be the fuel lines here. which we can either remove or we can just work on it like this without removing them. While you have it apart, you want to inspect this base gasket here. Make sure there's no cracks or mushiness to it. That's a nice quality gasket. Give a look through the intake port there into the piston while you're slowly pulling the engine over. Make sure you have it turned in the off position so it doesn't inadvertently start if there's some leftover fuel in there. And you can inspect the side of the piston and rings as it goes up and down. It should be smooth without any obvious vertical scoring or scratch marks, and not too much black carbon buildup either. Okay. Also, while it's off, inspect your fuel lines. We see we've got the return line here. Make sure it's flexible, not cracked, as well as the supply line, which is on this one is the black one. You can actually see a little kink in that black one there. It's been set maybe a little too long or too short, and it's got a kink in it. So we're going to cut just a little bit off the end of it and pull that kink part up onto the shaft here, and that'll take the kink out, and then we'll adjust the cable or hose up and down in this grommet here to make sure there's no flex to it when we get it back on. That'll make sure that we have a smooth fuel flow. Alright, here's the carburetor. It's a Zama. We've removed the side cover so we can see the metering arm. That's this silver little tang that sticks up here and bows up and down. When the engine operates, it pushes a little rubber diaphragm up and down, and that opens and closes the fuel inlet. When that raises up, goes down, it raises up the fuel needle and lets more fuel in. So I'm pretty sure it's set just a hair too high. It looks like it's sticking up above the edge of the throttle here just a little bit. And there's actually a gauge you can get. And I have the gauge somewhere and I can't find it right now. You lay across here with this little point on it, and that arm should be just touching the point of that gauge when you lay that across the sides of the carburetor. So we're just going to bend it down just a micro fraction of an inch, I mean maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and see if that helps our problem. Alright, I put one finger nail really tight over the top of the needle arm here, and then I use a little flat screwdriver just to push lightly down on the outer edge of the arm, and I set it so it's just below the surface of the two edges of the carburetor. I think that's where we need it to be on this one. When you're putting it back together, you're going to want to hook the throttle cable in first, but you don't have to. Either way, you can manipulate it. If you hook it in first, that's a little bit easier, but if not, you can push the throttle plate over with one finger and then grab the throttle cable with the other hand and hook it into place. So just don't forget to hook it back up. I've done that before. I think everybody has at one time or another. Alright, now you can see, if you look close, where we've reattached, let's see if we can get a good focus, where we've reattached the fuel line there, and I've pulled out some extra fuel line, but I haven't pulled out too much. You want it to have a little bit of give to it so it's not rigid and tight, but you don't want too much here where it's going to bend over to one direction or the other and kink. Where did I just, let me show you the part that we just cut off. There's the, sometimes it's just hard to focus on these little things here. See how kinked the end of that fuel line is, and it's almost restricted and blocked off. So make sure you check that. We've got everything back together and cleaned up a little bit. I've cleaned out the inside of the air cleaner housing here. Got all the residual fuel and stuff out of here. I sprayed it down the carb cleaner, and we're going to fire it back up and make sure we don't see any mist coming out of there while it's running.